Welcome and welcome back to the Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel and podcast. I'm Jessica. I am your host, where I discuss all things style, wellness, pop culture, and whatever else we feel like talking about from week to week. I'm happy to be here with you all. Welcome back. Stand if you are a new visiting person in our congregation. Okay, I'm trying out an audio-visual setup here to see if this will help me to be consistent with content on both the YouTube and the podcast, because it can get a little bit overwhelming to try to do all things all the time and consistently. So we'll see how this goes. I have been waiting to be in a state of creative flow. I have been evaluating whether or not my thoughts and opinions are valuable, if I'm adding to the conversation in a way that's positive and productive. And I was waiting to get back on the mic when I felt that the intention was there, the creative flow was there, all of the things or whatever, right? So I feel like we're there. I feel like I have some things to say that you might find useful. So here we are. Let me know how you feel about this setup in the comments, but keep it cute because y'all know I'm very sensitive. We'll talk about that a little bit. As per usual, gonna kick things off with a fashion tip. Like I said, I have been evaluating my intention with my content, whether or not I'm adding to the conversation in a way that is productive, whether or not my perspective is helpful. So I have been out and about for Fashion Week a little bit. Not doing too much. I don't like to be in the space unless I'm being paid to be there or unless there's a networking opportunity or something like that. Otherwise, I feel like you just in the way. And it is no tea, no shade to anybody that's just trying to get their content off. But at 37 years old, having been in New York for going on 12 years, I ain't really trying to be in the mix unless I need to really be in the mix. But I said that to say, again, thinking about my intention with my content, what could I be doing to further the conversation about style and about wellness and promoting other girls who look like me. And I had the pleasure of meeting the content creator Simi this past week. We were at the same event, and I'm always really happy to meet a person who is in real life, who they seem to be online, and she was so warm and welcoming. I really love her content. She does not shy away from color or shape or texture. She accessorizes like it's insane. I love her. So I want you guys to follow her and engage with some of her content. I always tell my styling clients, if you have no idea where to begin in terms of your aesthetic, a really great place to start is looking at other content creators. Get on Pinterest, scroll, save the things that jump out at you, and then once we get to a common place of the aesthetics that jump out to you the most, we can narrow down what your specific style is. And I want you to add Simi to that list. Check her out. I'm gonna put her info in this video description. So check out a new girl, engage with her, do all of the things, follow her, subscribe. We love her. She's a doll. So stay tuned. We're gonna talk about some hot topics, what I've been thinking on and what I've been doing while we haven't been chatting. Stay tuned. All right, so unless you've been under a rock for the past few weeks, you came across at some point the content surrounding Cam Newton's conversation with Dr. Bryant. I do not want to get into the weeds, the nitty gritty of why that was some wild shit that he was saying. That's been talked about to death. I want to zoom in on some of the things that Dr. Bryant pointed out that I personally felt not attacked by, but you know what, I could be doing better in this area when she said those things. So during Fashion Week, I had the pleasure of also meeting a really lovely girl who works in PR. I'm not gonna say her name because I didn't ask her if I could say her name, but she was an absolute delight. And upon meeting her, she asked, how do you spend your time? Instead of asking, what do you do? And I really, really like that. And I was like, I will be adding that to the lexicon, because I feel like asking people what they do can be such a loaded question. I know it's a very loaded question for me because I'm a content creator, but it's not what I do full time. So it's like, okay, am I telling you how I make money? Am I telling you the things that I like to do for fun? Am I telling you what I'm passionate about? And I just felt like that was a much better way to approach things. So since I haven't been on the pod, have been recovering from a breakup, among many other things. So I have been evaluating, taking inventory of the role that I played in the breakup, and holding myself accountable for areas where I could have done better, and also areas where he could have done better, so that moving forward, I have a better idea of what I'm looking for in partnership, right? So much of what she said is things that I've heard in therapy, but there was something about the dynamic between Dr. Bryant and Cam Newton, who is from the same place as I am. I went to the same high school as him. He was a freshman when I was a senior. He speaks and carries himself like a lot of the guys who are from where I'm from back home. And I felt really triggered by the way he was talking to Dr. Bryant. I felt like he was being really dismissive and belittling, and he seemed to be really threatened by this woman who's really knowledgeable and who is also really confident in herself and in her belief systems because she's done the work. And I have been dealing with men like Cam Newton my whole life and feeling like there is something wrong with me, that these men seem to be really combative when speaking with me. And it has occurred to me that maybe they're just out of their depth in speaking to me about certain things, but seeing that dynamic play out really solidified that for me. And my therapist has been telling me that for maybe like 10 years, but it helped to see the dynamic in a Black woman who is doing the work, who is a mental health advocate, who I can see some of myself in, and a man who is very indicative of men who I've been dealing with my whole life for a number of reasons that we will get into. So one of the things that I love that Dr. Bryant did was highlighting the difference between high value and high functioning. I think that capitalism gets into romantic relationships a whole lot, especially online and especially in this economy, honey, because look around, shit is expensive. And I think that for people who are in survival mode, they don't have the time to invest in the risk of romantic relationships. They want to know, what can I get out of this? And I think those people are looking for high value people, people who have a financial or professional or social kind of advantage for them. And not that people who are thriving or who aren't in survival mode so much aren't also looking for those things, but I don't feel like they're at the top of the list. That's more being high value. And I kind of hate that phrase because I think that it has been bastardized for a very specific type of men in the internet world. I don't even know if I want to say it because I don't want them coming over here. But I do think that it's important to make a distinction between a person who is very financially secure and maybe socially connected and all of those things, and a person who is high functioning. So a person who knows how to regulate their emotions, who is self-aware, and who practices those things in their interpersonal relationships. I'm really happy that she made that distinction in the conversation with him. One of the things that she said that stood out to me is the importance of identifying pain pockets in your own life so that you are choosing from a place of healing as opposed to choosing from a place of trauma. I know for me, I have replicated dynamics in my dating life where I looked up and I was like, damn it, I'm dating another person who is controlling. I'm dating another person who doesn't see me as a whole person, but sees me as an idea of a person, and they want me to fit into a certain box. But a lot of times the box they want to put me in is smaller than the person that I actually am. And I know moving forward, I want someone where I can expand and not shrink. And it was really helpful to hear her say, we have to heal our inner child because children don't have a place in adult relationships. We obviously know that, but hearing her say it in that context was like, wow, I really do want to identify more of where this is coming from for me so that I am able to regulate and be more high functioning in all of my relationships. And I know that there's something that I could have done a little bit or a lot of it better in my relationship, which was to be more regulated when I was triggered, to be very fair to myself. I think that if you are communicating with a person where you are not equally yoked in emotional intelligence, no matter how measured you are in your speech, they just may not be able to receive it. But I can say that I wanted to, the way that she put it, being better at communicating with a person when they got you fucked up is to be respectful, non-combative, and disarming. I don't know that I'm very good at disarming men. I don't think that I'm great at talking to men, period, because again, I find that a lot of times my interaction with them, they are really combative, but they think that I'm being combative because I present as having more confidence than I think that some of them are used to. And it always kind of like messes me up where I instantly am like, what did I do wrong here? And I realize that that is like a childhood like pain pocket for me of someone speaking to me in a way that I don't like, where I either shrink to make it go away or I explode from having tried to shrink myself too much. And then I'm triggered and I'm letting you know that I'm triggered. I'm not being measured in how I'm responding. I'm not responding at all. I'm reacting to the trigger. And seeing the way she was able to disarm and communicate with Cam when he was coming at her very crazy, that I think a lot of us can objectively agree, gave me a lot of insight and inspiration into how I can be better at having more productive conversations in the face of what I perceive to be disrespect or in the face of a trigger, because I don't want to be led by my trauma in that way. I don't want to choose people from a traumatic place. So I know that I have things to work on in terms of the responding versus reacting. And that's not new to me because, again, I've been in therapy for almost a decade, but seeing this dynamic between a cishet Black woman and a cishet Black man that is from where I'm from really helped me to see where I have work to do, and also helped me to see that I did walk away from that relationship when and how I should have, because what she talked about was her propensity to just leave. When things got too hard, she would run away. And I was talking to a friend where I was like, I just feel like maybe I gave up too soon. And before I even watched the 2-hour long interview between them, I was wondering, like, what is the difference between leaving and fleeing or abandoning? Like, how do you know the difference? And it's making a conscientious decision to go. So one thing that she said is that a person is establishing a boundary and the other person can take a self-inventory of, can I respect this boundary, or is this just not a good fit? And I'm proud of myself for sticking up for myself in the relationship and identifying the things that I needed and recognizing that this person just did not have the capacity or the willingness, who can say, to give me what I needed in order to thrive in the relationship. And I wanted him to communicate to me what he needed to thrive in the relationship. But he seemed to have this like block of, as a man, I'm not supposed to complain. And I kept trying to get him to see that that is not complaining. Give me the opportunity to show up better for you, because I'm going to let you know how to show up better for me. And it needs to be an even exchange so that you don't feel beat up on. And I think that that bred a lot of resentment, like him not feeling comfortable vocalizing his needs in the relationship, I think made him resentful. And it just didn't work out. And I'm making my peace with that. But I think it's important that when things don't work out in a relationship, you need to alchemize that into something so that you can move forward peacefully. And what I'm doing is recognizing how I can be better to myself, like a better advocate for myself, and how I can better communicate with all the people in my life and sometimes people will disappoint you, and I want to make sure that I'm communicating that in a way that's productive and not causing further harm. So I encourage you, if you can get through it. Several of my friends were like, I can't watch that. And it took me a minute to finish that entire podcast because, like I said, it was really triggering to see the way he was talking to her. But I so admire the way she handled herself. And there was a lot that I took away from it. So I encourage you, if you can get through it, to watch it and take some notes and just see if there's anything that's beneficial for you. Part of the fallout of that interview was his most recent partner, mother of his most recent child. She's a content creator who met a lot of resistance when she came out talking about how much she likes to be in service to him. And she was on Shan Boodram's podcast, which I really enjoy. I think Shan is very thoughtful and intentional and holistic in terms of how she discusses relationships and mental health, especially between men and women. And one of the things that Shan talked about in that podcast with his most recent partner, I want to say her name is Jazz or Jazzy or something like that. It just fell out of my head. But she was saying that we do need to give women more space to explore things that are in their wheelhouse of joy. And for some women, for some people, being a stay-at-home mom, being a homemaker is fulfilling for them, right? And I can agree with that. I think that it's important for people to identify what feels good to them and to do that. And that's going to be different for different women, right? And what I'm realizing about myself is when I was in the relationship, I did find a lot of joy in helping to make his life easier. It is an honor and a privilege to show up for a person in a way that makes their life easier. To know that you have the capacity and the resources and the willingness to show up for someone in a way that makes them feel good. It's very fulfilling. But the point at which you're doing that and there's no reciprocity, it becomes like manipulation and abuse. And in sitting with some of the content that she put out afterwards, I feel like, number one, we need to implement a buddy system. We need a social buddy system where if you have a hot take or something controversial to say that you know is somewhat controversial, you need a buddy. You need somebody that you can text, that you can say, hey, I feel like this, da-da-da, and that person can let you know if that's something you need to share with the world. I think that his partner is like, you doth protest too much. If you're really secure in being of absolute service to this man, you don't need to convince us. I don't know if maybe you validate yourself there, but you don't need to convince us, baby. Get it how you live. There's a lot of women living that life, and we haven't heard from them because they're very secure in living that life. So I felt like that was really interesting, like the constant justification for the role that she plays in his life, especially given the things that he said about wanting other children and not necessarily with her, just however they come. Very interesting choices were made. Speaking of choice, this led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. As a person who is a feminist and is continuing to learn more about what that means and what that looks like, I was not familiar with the concept of choice feminism. I feel like that's just something that I was practicing just in learning that women don't have to be a CEO or an entrepreneur or a whatever, or an activist really, to be feminists. Like, you should be able, if we're going to support a woman's right to choose, shouldn't that extend to everything in her life, right? So choice feminism is a critical term for expression of feminism that emphasizes women's freedom of choice. I think that that is important, especially in terms of developing more allies. What I was seeing online, though, from some Black feminists is choice feminism doesn't really benefit anyone, because consider the example of these very conservative, extremely conservative content creators and, you know, voices in the world. It is their right to be that way. It is Candace Owens's right to choose to live the way that she does, right? And we, I guess, as feminists are supposed to support that choice, but it's not feminism. And I was like, okay, let me sit with that. So I was talking it over with a fellow feminist, my really good friend Troy, and he was saying that he could tangentially relate it to my feelings about Black people in luxury and fashion. If you're a Black person who, especially as a content creator, that you're in the luxury space, that's your whole vibe, that's just a thing that you're doing in the world, but it's not activism. It's just you're a different person participating in capitalism and making other people feel that they have the space to do that as well. And it opened up a lot of conversations about how we define luxury, and that was great, but it's not activism. So tying that back, if a woman is making the choice to be a stay-at-home wife and mom, we love that for you. I hope you have the resources to do that in a way that is not abusive or exploitive. But is that an act of feminism? Not necessarily, because how are you furthering or getting us further away from patriarchy? Is that in any way freeing or liberating? So that's something that I'm sitting with and thinking through, in wanting to be inclusive, in wanting to consider the nuance of life experiences. As a cishet woman, like, I want long-term partnership with a cishet man. In doing that, is that it's not feminism. It's just me doing a thing in life that I want to do, but it's not feminism. So that's something that I'm sitting with. I'm still researching and reading about and making sure that, again, my intention and my actions are in alignment with what my values are. So that's something that I have been thinking about a lot. So another thing that I have been seeing online, in addition to wanting people to have a social media buddy, a group text to share some of your hot takes with, I feel like introverts have been online acting like they are a protected class of people. I'm going to say, as someone who is perceived as an extrovert, which I know we have kind of bastardized those meanings, but let's just talk about it from the perspective of what it's perceived as, right? I feel like people have really fucking disliked me for being outgoing, sometimes loud, boisterous. I've been called obnoxious. I've been called extra. I've been told that I'm too much. And all of these things, from my perspective, it always seems like people really cater to introverts more. If you're perceived to be confident and extroverted, people aren't asking you if you're okay. They just perceive you to be okay because you just want to be the center of attention. And here's the thing, I don't actually enjoy being the center of attention. It just happens because I'm opinionated. And to some people, I can be very annoying. So to the introverts of the world, or wherever you fall on that spectrum, because a lot of people are actually a combination of both. People can be quite simple, but people can also be really complicated. And there is, again, the nuance of experience, right? A couple of things. Number one, we have to learn how to validate ourselves. We have to learn how to validate our own existence and how we present in the world. That is work that I am still doing. I find myself realizing that I still have insecurities that I thought I was well past. And baby, I am not. I still have feelings of inadequacy in certain spaces, and that's something that I want to work on, right? In order to do that, I have to validate myself. I have to know that who and how I am is enough, right? What I also have to practice is self-awareness. Me being opinionated, for example, does not mean that my opinion is needed in every single instance. There is a certain person who is a scholar and a content creator and a writer and a podcaster and a performer and an actor that people find absolutely insufferable. I think that person is very smart. I think that they have a lot of really progressive things to say. I think their voice is valuable, but I think that person lacks self-awareness. And that's something that all people have to practice. Who you are is fine, but we have to be more measured in the levels of ourselves that we present to people, because to some people, we will be absolutely annoying. You don't always have to care about whether or not you're annoying, but you do have to understand how you are and what you're putting into the world in relation to other people, in relation to situations. If you are in a social setting and you don't feel like being social, does it not make sense for people to check in and say, are you okay? Is that not okay? And I'm asking, like, for people who are introverts and who, oh, I just find like spaces to be overwhelming. Are you introverted, or do you possibly have like some manner of ADHD where sound like really overstimulates you? Because those are things to really consider. The other thing is, the world is not catered to us. The world is not, we can't go into every space virtually or in real life expecting for people and everything to bend to our will, to our unique trauma, to our unique experiences. We would be miserable all the time if that was the expectation. So, again, validate yourself, practice some self awareness, and be open to the fact that there are people in the world who are welcoming of your Bridget Jones's diary exactly as you are. There are people who will love you and accept you exactly as you are. And I know, because I have found those people. It used to make me so sad when people be like, oh my God, you are so extra, you are so da da da. And to those people, I'm sure I am, because in their mind, how I am, they're like, oh, it just meant you just do too much. I'm not, though. This is really just who I am. It doesn't take a whole lot for me to be a yapper, because I just like to talk and I like to listen and I like to hear other people's thoughts. And I do have to understand that to some people, my energy can be overwhelming. That's okay. I have to have that awareness, and I have to be okay with who I am. And I don't think that it's anybody else's responsibility to make me be okay with who I am. And a conversation I was also just having with a person at an event was, they were saying that they were taught to treat people how they wanted to be treated. And I said, can I propose to you that maybe you should treat people how they want to be treated? And I think conversations about introversion and extroversion is really indicative of that. Like, we all fall somewhere on the spectrum in different situations. And to actually love and care for someone is to learn what they need in those different situations, to learn how we can best show up for the people that we have the capacity to love and care for. And that is something that I realized was lacking in my relationship, was you're not really willing to learn who I am and what I actually need, as opposed to just putting me in a box and saying this is how women are and this is what women need, when I am a very specific woman with a very specific, life experience, and I need for someone who has the capacity to show compassion and emotional support in certain areas for me. And if you don't have the capacity, you don't have to do it. But there are people who have that space, who, if you're a person who gets overstimulated by noise, maybe the kind of company that you enjoy is just someone sitting next to you on the couch and watching TV together. And maybe that's like a better investment of time for you. But this expectation that the world should be more quiet, and that social events are just catered to people who are more extroverted. Well, okay. Are you a protected class that I don't know about? Is it ableist and I don't know about it? Because I'm open to considering, like, again, how I can show up better in the world, but none of us have the capacity to adhere to everybody's individualized trauma. And if we want to make the world more livable for ourselves, given those different things, I think that we're going to have to take more responsibility for ourselves, for our wellness, and make sure that we have community that is supportive of who and how we are, people who can hold space for us in those kinds of ways. And I don't know how introverts can find that if you're not willing to put yourself out there, but I think overwhelmingly most of my friends are introverts, and I think their willingness to be open to someone like me is the reason why we can kind of balance each other out, and why I have learned to have more self-awareness of sometimes my energy can be overwhelming to people, and sometimes my opinion is not always needed. My voice is not always needed. And I think I might have overthought that in terms of my content, because again, I still have an insecurity about being perceived as being too much or being extra. Like, those were such like triggering words for me that I'm still coming to terms with. Who I am is okay. I'm not too much. I'm just right for the right people, and the right people will gravitate towards me. So it's still work that I'm doing, but I just wanted to put that out there, that validate yourself, but also practice self-awareness and be open to people who can also validate you when you need that kind of space. So that's it for this week. Oh, I want to tell y'all what I'm watching. A whole lot of shit. Number one, Rebel Ridge was amazing. That man has such a gorgeous, gorgeous face. I would watch him read a Cheesecake Factory menu. I would watch him read the ingredients on the back of prenatal vitamins. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous face. Was not expecting it. I ran out of stuff to watch and I was like, let me just see what this is hitting on. Let me tell y'all something. Dick Wolf did his big one with Law and Order Organized Crime. That Elliot Stabler, that Christopher Maloney, he always deserved his own space. I am loving this series. And I know that our relationship to the police and law enforcement is obviously very fraught for a whole lot of reasons. And as Black people, we really got to sit with why we enjoy these shows. But damn it, that one is giving us a lot. And it is an NBC show, so they're not pushing the envelope too much in terms of talking about race relations. But they are going to some spaces that I wasn't expecting them to go. So shouts out to them for that. I am going to be discussing Interview with the Vampire Season 1. I am still wrapping up my recaps of House of the Dragon Season 2. So check out the channel for those things, and I will be back soon. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment and rate and review wherever you're listening, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.